Yo, what's going on YouTube? I know it's been a little bit since we made a video, but we really haven't had much going on at the shop, as far as racing goes. It's been pretty snowy out here, but I just broke the trans in my all-wheel drive car again, so I just pulled it out yesterday, so I'm going to actually pull it apart and show you guys how to pull apart a all-wheel drive K-Series tranny or any K-Series tranny. They're pretty much the same. So I'm going to set up the tripod over here and kind of give you a run through on how to pull it apart, and then we'll see what kind of damage this thing has on the inside. Alright guys, so to get started off, I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of what tools you're going to need. So something like a 3/8 impact, a ratchet. You're going to need a 10mm socket, 14mm socket. This is a number 6 Allen head socket, 14mm Allen head socket, and a number 8mm socket. Some type of snap ring pliers or needle nose pliers like this to get the snap ring off of the top of the trans, and some type of pry bar or screwdriver to split the case from the transmission itself. So let's get started on pulling this thing apart. In my case, I need the 6mm to pull off this K-tune bracket right here, but if you don't have this one, if you have a stock one, I believe these are just 3 12mm bolts that you got to pull off, so you probably won't need the 6. But in my case, I do have this piece, so I do need the 6mm to get those 3 bolts off right there. Another thing too that you're going to need as well is a 2x4 or some kind of board to put underneath the trans right here. Just so the shaft isn't sitting on the table. Makes it a little bit harder, makes it a little harder to disassemble. But this one, where you can already see there's some broken pieces of trans in there that you can kind of see already, so we're going to get into some carnage here in a little bit. Alright, so the first thing I usually do is I pull out the throwout bearing and the lever here, so you just kind of pull out on it, and it'll come disengaged from the ball there. So it comes disengaged from the ball right there. You slide this out. This is how this assembly looks. This spring right here is kind of what holds it into place onto this ball right here. Usually when you go putting this back together, you put a little bit of grease on there and on the ball, and just a tiny bit right here on the collar. Not too much, because then it'll sling all over your clutch and you'll have grease all over your clutch, and that's not good. So usually pull that out first. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this bracket off right here, and then I'm going to pull the shift assembly out. So these are number 6 Allen heads. Go ahead and zip those out. Alright, next, in pulling out the shift change assembly, there is a, this is the number 8 Allen head bolt you have to pull out before you can pull this whole assembly out. I'll show you why in a second. So this is a number 8 Allen head. It's usually pretty tight, so that's why you need a ratchet breaker loose. So we got that guy loose. Go ahead and pull it out. It usually has some type of sealant or something on it, so that makes it a little bit harder to get out. But set that right here. Pull out the shift change assembly now. This assembly is 4 10mm bolts. One here, one here, one here, and one through here. So if your shift change assembly is like this and you can't get to the bolt, it actually has a hole right here in the middle that they specifically made for you to be able to get your socket through here and pull that bolt out. Got my 10mm here. Probably need a little extension. Add that to your list of what you're going to need, a small extension. So 1, 2, 3, Alright, so now that we got those 4 10mm bolts out, you grab your pry bar here, and you can pry underneath this little square part right here. Just give it a gentle pry, it'll pop up. And it has dowel pins. It has one dowel pin on this corner and one on the opposite corner, so you can kind of pry up a little bit on there to get it out. And then you just kind of have to wiggle to get it out. So that's the shift change assembly right there. And the reason why you had to pull out that 8mm bolt is because that bolt slides into this slot right here. So when you take that out, it allows you to pull this straight up. If you were to leave that in, you would never be able to get this out. So now we're going to pull out the detent balls. These are 3 12mm bolts that are right here. It is a bolt, a washer, a spring, and a ball. So make sure you don't misplace those because they're really easy to lose. Just like that, so you can grab this. There's your bolt, your washer. These are aluminum washers or crush washers, and springs. This one does have the upgraded Speed Factory detent ball springs, so they're a lot tougher. So it makes the ratcheting, the shifter feel more ratchety, I guess you could say. So there's number 2 and number 3. So 3. I have a magnet here, but it's a little bit too big. So sometimes I put the magnet on the screwdriver like that, and it magnetizes it, and you can pull the balls out. So this is what the detent balls look like. So we can get it to focus. So this is what the detent balls look like. Just a little stainless steel ball. So there's 3 of those. Those are really easy to lose, so I always try to grab them with the magnet. Now that we got those out, we're going to go ahead and get all of the case bolts out. So they're all 12mm. They go all the way around the edge. So we're going to go ahead and flip this up on the face. Put this underneath it. Anywhere it really works. Oh, there's a lot of broken pieces of stuff in there. I can hear it. Okay. So we got that flipped up. I'm going to pull those case bolts out. Is a 14mm bolt down here on the bottom half of the trans. This is for the reverse selector. It's a 14mm bolt with a aluminum washer, just like the detent balls. That guy usually has Honda Bond sealant on it as well, so it's pretty difficult to get off sometimes. Okay. This is the C-clip that you're going to be having to pull off. This guy right here. So usually, you can move it over a little bit, but there's probably a bunch of gunk in there from the trans being broken. But either way, so what you're going to do is you're going to try to separate this clip, and then you're going to pry up on the case. So you put these in here like that, and sorry, get this to focus. Okay, so you're going to put this in here like that, spread this, and then pull up on the case to try to get the case off. Best I can. I usually do it with one hand like that. And then it's got a couple of pry spots here on the trans. It's got this little ear right here that you can kind of tap on. It's got another good pry point right here. This is another ear that you can pry on to get it off, and it has another one on this side right here. So it's got three different spots where you can pry on. Usually the one that's the best is right here, because you actually have a spot where you can actually push down and pry on the case itself. Sometimes these are really difficult to get apart, so just be patient and make sure you got your C-clip apart up here. That's going to help you the most. So go ahead and give it some pry here. Run up a little bit. You can kind of pry. I usually pry on the on the mating surface here a little bit, not too crazy because you don't want to mar up the mating surface, but you can give it a little bit to try to get it to separate even more. But yeah, this one's just pulling up on the differential, kind of being a pain. So at this point, the C-clip is already past the bearing up here. I'll show you what it looks like. So the C-clip is already past the bearing there, so you don't really have to worry about it anymore after that. After it gets past the bearing like that, then you no longer have to worry about the C-clip. So we get on the C-clip there. We'll just keep giving it some pries, and sometimes if you pry it from two sides at the same time, kind of wiggle it. It helps get it off, just like that. Once you get it up and off like that, pull up on this and find all the broken pieces in there. So the second gear on the counter shaft is pretty damaged. You can tell it's missing some teeth there. And the second gear on the main shaft itself is completely gone, actually. The whole thing there, as you can see it there. So we're going to go ahead and pull the gear stacks out of this. I'll show you how to do that. And we'll move on to disassembling the gear stacks. I do have another second gear and another main shaft, so we can possibly get this all back together today. Alright, so to pull out the gear stacks, you're going to be pulling out 4 10mm bolts, 2 that are right here, and then 2 right here on the reverse gear selector. You have to pull these 2 off first to get to this other 10mm bolt that's back here. So this is what that piece looks like. 2 10mm bolts. And these 2 10mm. Yeah, you pull the bolts out. Sorry. Pull the 2 bolts out, and then you can kind of pull on this way, and it just slides right out just like that. This is the reverse selector, and I believe this piece right here holds the gear selector in place when the trans is all together. It goes in there just like that. It's a little bushy. And next thing is we'll pull out the reverse idler. Usually this hits on this collar right here, so you pull this up into gear and then pull up on the shaft, and it just pops right out there. These ones you can put in 180 out, because these don't have a pin right here like the B series transmissions. They have a pin right here that lines up with the case. These ones do not. So you can put these in 180 degrees out. When you go to put the trans back together, you have to make sure that you line this hole up with this little notch right here on the case, or sorry, on the bell housing. If not, you'll put it all together and this will be like this, and you'll never be able to get that bolt in. Sometimes if you get lucky, it's kind of halfway there and you can get something in there and this will turn, and then you can get the bolt in there. But we'll cover more on that when we go to put the trans back together. So after that, if you get those parts out, then that'll allow you to pull the gear stacks up out of place. There's a couple broken pieces from the gear there. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to grab the shift forks and both stacks at the same time. I usually put my hand underneath the second gear right here because it's part of the shaft. and the gear stack won't come apart when you try to pull it out. I've done that before to where I try to grab the third gear and then everything falls off. There's forks on the floor, everything's on the floor, and that makes it really difficult to put back together if you haven't done this before. So I'll grab underneath the second gear right there, and the counter shaft is all bolted together, so you can grab that from pretty much from wherever you want. And grab the shipped forks as well, pull up, and you can set everything down on the table just like that. If you do that, you gotta notice that right here it's got two washers that come off the main shaft here. It's one flat washer and one tension washer, so when you put those back on, you gotta make sure they go back on the same spot. So when I pull these off, I always inspect these for cracks. You always want to look right here where this weld is and see if it's cracked. Also, these break a lot. Just right here, the hairline crack all the time from hard shifts. This one looks okay. It's a little bit worn right here, but nothing too crazy. And then you can always inspect these welds as well to make sure that they're okay. And then the pads, these are the pads that hold the slider on. So for when you shift, you can kind of inspect that. This one's got a little bit of wear on it as well, but nothing too crazy. The second gear, well, I guess what's left of it. So this is the second gear. It's completely gone. And like I said, this gear is part of this shaft, so whenever you break this, you have to replace the whole shaft no matter what. Now this is first gear, and it looks pretty damaged as well. Right there, it's got missing teeth, and that's from driving the car after the gear broke and everything like that. That's why it damaged the first gear as well. So it looks like it chunked up the counter shaft pretty good as well. It's just missing a bunch of pieces down here. And then this is the second gear on the counter shaft. Also pretty damaged right there from the teeth completely shearing off the other one. So we're going to pull this main shaft apart real quick. I'll show you how to do that. And then we'll move on to the, looks like we're going to need a counter shaft as well. Alright guys, well that's going to be it for part one of disassembly the transmission. In the next video I'll be showing you how to pull the main shaft and the counter shaft apart. So we'll see you guys in the next video, and thanks for watching.